Welcome back to San Diego People. I'm Adhd. This morning we're talking about learning disorders and mental health in children, and we are taking a look at what can be done to make sure their lives are on the path to success. I'm joined by Maria Bagby, founder of the Therapeutic Literacy Center. Maria, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
What specialties and services does your center offer?
We like to remediate the learning disability. What we always say, you can ride through life with a flat tire, why not change it? So if you, historically, you and I, we were taught that you have to live with what you're born with, but now neuroplasticity and the neurosciences are saying we can change the brain. We can do that.
What kind of disorders, learning disorders, do you normally see in the kids that you deal with?
We get a lot of ADHD, which it broadly defined, it then can be either auditory processing challenges or disorders. It can be working memory that needs to be improved. We get a lot of reading challenges. Some of them, a few of them are dyslexia. Many are just on in a different path. And auditory processing disorder is something that is now becoming more and more recognized.
You're seeing more of that. What type of specialized education do you offer for these kids?
Well, in terms of the education, and we do have 10 full-time students, we're approaching it from a therapeutic kind of that underlying learning skill approach for those. And we mostly have after-school students and some before, a lot of homeschool coming and going or independent studies. But the type of education that we're offering is to improve or remediate their working memory, their processing speed, their auditory or visual processing, those things that have to work together in order for learning to be more independent and successful in school.
Now, how do you go about doing that? How do you go about instilling in them that type of, ability to learn?
Yeah, what you're talking about is training the brain. We always thought that we couldn't change our brain, but we would try to learn the piano as adults, and some of us would be successful. We'd learn a new language as adults. We're simply doing that with younger people. First graders through college really are what we have tended to work with. We have some adults. But the exercises, the brain training that we do is really individually targeted to what their deficit is. We're very deficit specific. So the how-to question is how many hours do you have?
How do you measure the success that you're having with the students?
First of all, the daily comments that we hear from parents. This morning, the art teacher said, that he wasn't jumping around, that he wasn't grabbing and being impulsive about colors, and she doesn't even know that what we're doing and coming to see you. And I heard that this morning, and that's a child who was bouncing off the walls with attention and impulsivity just a few weeks ago.
How do you determine, I know you said you had 10 students, how do you determine who qualifies for full-time schooling and who gets the part-time schooling, maybe homeschooling?
We don't control a lot of that. We know who are the right students to have our small setting, and then we help transition them back into a typical, because we don't want them a long time. We want to fix the problem and send them on. Sometimes it's transportation. A lot of times it's because these poor kids, why do they have to work so hard in school, and they're working harder than the average Joe, and then come to therapy after school? And when do they do homework and roll in the dirt and just be kids? I'm
sure you have a waiting list too, don't you?
We do right now.
Yeah. And these kids are mostly kids who have ADHD or dyslexia or what?
Parents generally say they're struggling. They've always been struggling, and the teachers have always been saying, "Well, just wait. He'll catch on. She'll grow into it." All these things. And
That's the things we used to say, and I guess parents are still saying it. They'll grow out of it, maybe.
That's and about 3rd or 4th grade, we get a bulk because it's like, whoops, they didn't grow out of it, But then they go on, maybe even in middle school. Well, if you just apply yourself, pay attention. The family tension is generally when they make a call and say, okay, wait, is there something different? Tutoring hasn't worked. Just teaching more reading is like banging their head against the wall. If their visual or auditory processing is lower than what it could be or what it needs to be, because reading requires them to work together.
Do you find the kids that come to your center are able to focus better on specific areas than other areas? They have stronger abilities to really hone in on certain things as opposed to other kids. And I'm talking about kids with ADHD.
Right. I think what you're asking is just a humanity question. I think we all can hone in on what we're most interested in and where our gifts and talents are. What I love to do is find out where they're weak and go for it, you know, and just fix that problem. Children with ADHD, I always say that's a cakewalk. That's not hard to fix. And there are some who are biochemically in need. I have met in my 15 years probably 5. Other than that, ADHD really is an inefficient multitasking, an inability to shift or sustain.
How do you change that behavior?
Well, there are a number. Again, it's deficit specific. It could be that inner organization body function that they're fighting against. Maybe reflex or something going on physically that, again, you can control or not even control. You can exercise that type of thing. A lot of it is brain clock and working memory. And our approach is, instead of telling children everything that they typically hear, and we all tell kids as 30 years of teaching, I have too, focus on one thing. Just do this. Pay attention. If you just apply yourself. What we actually do is the opposite. We bombard them with stimulation, auditory, visual, but all of it within a clock system. So they're within. So
they're able to focus a little more when you bombard them that way, I guess?
Well, they start to be able to handle more segments and pieces of information and help them nurture each other instead of scattering them and losing them.
Isn't that what's done sometimes in the classroom in high school, for instance, that they get bombarded with so many different topics and they're unable to sit and listen for long periods of time, that they just lose all attention span?
Yeah, that's true. Without the training, though, for those children, if it's hitting them in high school, then we could have done something a little earlier, but we still can. We want to, through these specific training exercises, we want to really train their brain on being more efficient for handling all that stimulation.
Maria, great. Good talking to you.
Yeah, it's fun.
And we will continue our topic still ahead on San Diego People. We're taking a broader look at mental health in children and the resources available for them and their families. We'll be right back.